Welcome to Spiritual Sense with Shay. I am so happy to be with you guys. This is another week that the Lord has brought us through, and for that I say thank you, Jesus. Let's get started with where we left off last time. Now, again, I'm doing the series of Joseph, and we had already talked about we came from the scripture. Let's see, we had a couple of scriptures. The story of Joseph starts in chapter 37 of the book of Genesis. And when I started teaching, we came from the first point was Genesis 37, the 37th chapter, the 3rd to the 10th verse. And the first point that I talked about was don't tell everybody everything. Don't tell everybody everything. And so that was just talking about how Joseph, the Lord shared a dream with Joseph, and it said to him, possibly, maybe, should have, might have kept it to himself. He tells his father, he tells his brothers. His brothers hated him. And so when he told them the dream that he would rule over them, they hated him all the more. That's what the scripture says. And the father actually rebuked him. You're going to have to go back and listen. It's on my website, or you can go to the YouTube channel. But What Do I Do Part 1. Because there's a lot that was said, and just for time's sake, I don't want to go back into all of that. But the first point that was talked about in that part 1 was don't tell everybody everything. And it was just Joseph not telling everything that the Lord had shared, because it caused his brothers to hate him even more. It caused his brothers to plot against him and try to kill him. But then they later sold him into slavery. Joseph was his father's favorite son. He favored him so much that he gave him the coat of many colors. The brothers hated that about him as well. They called Joseph the dreamer. When Joseph shared the dream about what the Lord had showed him as far as his family bowing down to him, or him ruling over his family, the father even rebuked him. So it was the first point was don't tell everybody everything. And then I did Genesis, the 39th chapter, the 6th verse through the 20th verse. And the second point that I talked about was don't make the situation worse. And it talked about how Joseph found himself in several different situations. And the idea is to remain content, see what God is doing in that situation. Don't make a move that causes the situation to be worse. Don't make a move where it causes you to stay in a particular place in your particular meantime longer than you have to. So that was the third point. And now today we arrive at our third point. And for our third point, I will be talking about, I'll be coming from Genesis, the 39th chapter, and I'll put the slide up for you guys so that you can read the scripture along with me. It is Genesis. Okay, there we have it on I believe we have it there. Genesis, the 39th chapter, verses 21 through 23. And it reads on this wise, but while Joseph was there in the prison, the Lord was with him. He showed him kindness and granted him favor in the eyes of the prison warden. So the warden put Joseph in charge of all those held in prison, and he was made responsible for all that was done there. The warden paid no attention to anything under Joseph's care, because the Lord was with Joseph and gave him success in whatever he did. All right, folks, that's where we are. We are now at the point where Joseph is in prison, right? And so I want to talk from the third point of part 1 of what do I do in the meantime. The third point is be content until your change come, because remember, we're talking about our meantime experience. And so we don't want to tell everybody everything. We don't want to make situations worse. And the last thing is we must learn to be content until our change come, because the change is coming. And so here we now have Joseph in prison. He's been thrown in prison, but we know that it was still by divine providence, right? Because the scripture continues to tell us that the Lord was with him. That's what the scripture says. We don't have to guess. We don't have to think about it. The scripture tells us that even where he was now, the Lord was with him. And once again, we see that someone else favors Joseph. Again, right? The warden of the prison that he was thrown into, he favors Joseph. How can someone be in hellish situations and find favor? How can you be in a hellish situation and find favor? How can you be dealing with hellish situations and be given favor to the point that you are put in charge of your hell? I'm going to say it again because that's a powerful question and something that we really need to think about. How can you be dealing with a hellish situation and be given favor to the point that you are put in charge of your hell? That's something really that we have to think about. Joseph is in prison and he finds favor with the warden, and the warden puts him in charge of all the prisoners and gave him the responsibility to deal with all concerning the jail. Now, some might say that, well, if I gotta be in this godforsaken place, at least I can control it, right? That's what some would say. But can you imagine the level of frustration that Joseph had to be under? Can you imagine? Just think for a second the type of frustration he has to be over. God gives him a dream, right? This is going back to the beginning. God gives him a dream. His brothers didn't like him. They hated him, and they didn't like the fact that he had this particular dream. They sell him into slavery. First, they try to kill him or plot to kill him, and then they sell him into slavery. He goes from being a slave to being a master, right? Because it tells us that when they sold him into slavery, they took him to Potiphar's house. Instead of him going to be a slave, he begins to rule in Potiphar's house, which he might have thought was it. That was the dream coming to pass. That's something that Joseph could have possibly thought, right? But then what happens? Potiphar's wife finds him attractive and tries to have an affair with him. Because Joseph respects Potiphar, because he loves the Lord, he denies the woman. And what does she do? Accuses him of trying to sleep with her, tells Potiphar this, and what happened? He throws him into prison. Like, Jesus, come on. You have got to be kidding me. Like, I'm going through all of this. Is it some kind of game? I thought when I was in Potiphar's house that was it. You got to imagine that Joseph is thinking this stuff, that the dream was coming to pass because he was in a blessed place, right? And now you're telling me that I had a dream and the dream is going to come to pass in a prison because I'm no longer in Potiphar's house. So is it going to come to fruition now in the prison? I'm not saying that the scripture suggests that Joseph was frustrated, but when you think of the different events that are taking place in his life, there has to be a level of frustration. There has to be. There is frustration when you know that the Lord has given you a word, showed him a dream, might have given you a word. God has given me a word, right? Has shown me all these different things, but frustration increases because all you want to know is when. When is it going to happen, and why do I have to go through all these things in order for it to happen? Right? These has got to be some of the things that Joseph is thinking. And these are some of the things that we think when we're in our meantime experience. When, God, when? The scripture tells us that not that I have speak in respect of want, for I have learned in whatever state I am in therewith to be content. That's basically saying no matter what is going on, no matter where I am, I need to learn how to be content in that particular situation. And when we are content, we are satisfied. I know that's like, you got to be kidding me. I'm in hell and you want me to be satisfied? Can't be. Just can't be. Right? But when we are content, we are satisfied, or we're in a state of peacefully happiness. Like, we're peacefully happy. That is what contentment is. What do you mean, Shay? I'm dealing with tight, hard, hellish situations, and I'm supposed to be satisfied and have peace while I'm dealing with this? Yes. That is exactly what I am trying to say. The word convicts here first. It convicts me first. There are different things that God has shown me. There's different things that people have prophesied to me to confirm things that God has said to me, that God has shown me. There's different things that I'm believing God for that I know is coming, but it gets hard and it gets frustrating because just like Joseph, it's like, Lord, it's taking too long. When is this going to happen? Right? When am I going to be delivered from this place to the place that you've shown me? When? I wasted enough time, right? That's some of the stuff that we start to think when we're in our meantime experience. But God is saying, I am with you, just like he was with Joseph. It said it in the scripture. He's in prison, but the Lord was with him to the point that he finds favor with the warden, right? Everything you have been through and is going through is divinely ordered. You have to believe that, because if you don't believe that, then it's like a woe is me mentality. You have to believe that it is divinely ordered. If you are one of God's children, then your steps are ordered by him. Every situation Joseph got in, scripture says that the Lord was with him. His steps were ordered by the Lord. He wasn't going through things because of something he did, but because God wanted to use every event in his life to bring him to the place that he dreamed of. And I want to just touch a little bit on the fact that he wasn't in his situation because of something that he did. Because sometimes we tend to think that if we're dealing with a hellish situation, or we're in fire, or something crazy is going on in our life, we tend to think that it's because we've done something. And that's not necessarily the case. It doesn't have to always be the case. It could be God allowed it to happen because he needs to develop something in you for where he is trying to take you. One of the fruits of the Spirit is joy. And scripture tells us that the joy of the Lord is our strength. That means that in our meantime, we have joy because we know that God is with us. I know it's hard to grasp, but it is the truth. You have to have joy in what you're dealing with because you know that God is with us. In any battle, don't you want someone with you that can help you, someone that can win? Joseph had the Lord, and so do we. And we have to learn how to be content in a particular situation. Yes, your change is going to come. God promises it in his word. Galatians 6:9 says, and let us not be weary in well doing, for in due season, when the time is right, we shall reap if we faint not. That's that condition. Like, you gotta hold on. You gotta be able to go through it. You gotta deal with your meantime, because there is something waiting for you on the other side. You just have to realize, what am I going to do in the meantime? And so that was point 3 of part 1. What do I do in the meantime? And remember what we said about a meantime experience. A meantime experience is basically a holding place, and you're being held in place for a specific amount of time because there's something that you need to accomplish. There's something that needs to be brought to you. There's something that needs to be released, and it's all for the glory of God. And the characteristics of your meantime experience is, one, realization. You have to realize, where am I? Why am I here? Where should I be? You have to begin to realize some things. The second thing is you have to reevaluation. Where should I be? You have to ask yourself that question. And how should I be doing what it is that I need to be doing? And then the last thing is rest. And that is learning how to be content. So what do you do in your meantime? You don't tell everybody everything. You don't make the situation worse. You be content until your change come, because a change is coming. Many are the afflicted of the righteous, but the Lord delivers us out of them all. God loves you with an everlasting love. Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid or terrified because of them, for the Lord your God goes with you. That's why you can be content, because the Lord of God is with you. He will never leave you, nor will he forsake you. And everything that is happening is working together for your good. And so that concludes the first